Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Lapel from New Focus Recordings. I'm happy to be joined by Johanna Lundy from the Borderlands Ensemble down in Arizona. Hey, Johanna, how's it going? Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks for
s-
having me.
yeah, uh, excited for this release, the first for your group, which was founded in 2017, right?
Mhm.
And the title is "The Space in Which to See." It's a collection of several pieces written for the Borderlands Ensemble. Some really great arrangements. Maybe you want to set things up a little bit, like by telling our massive YouTube audience about the genesis of the ensemble and the project.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a French horn player, and it's a group of horn and strings. So we started a couple of years ago, like you said. Really was part of a solo horn project that I was putting together, and as much as I love the medium of solo unaccompanied contemporary horn, I thought maybe that was too much for audiences to listen to entire concerts of that. So I asked some of my friends if they would join me, and we put together some new and interesting concert formats where we did. There was some solo stuff, and then there was some chamber music, and we really enjoyed playing together. So that's really where the group began, and we primarily were playing in kind of alternative venues as well. So we all know each other from playing together in the symphony, but this was really an opportunity to do something different, work in small settings, and play some different types of music, especially contemporary music for small audiences.
Great. And this particular project really sort of engages with uh, a dialogue or conversation between music that's centered around the Borderlands region, right? Like a sort of Arizona tradition and a Mexican tradition, and how those two things can sort of mix and meld.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our identity is a classical music group, um, but we are based here in the Borderlands region. We've all lived here for most of us for a long time, and living and working in this community. So it's part of who we are. And I thought it was important for our first album that we were going to come out with to especially connect with Arizona's history. So we are an interesting location. The border moved over the course of time, and so there are people living in Tucson who lived, they have generations going back before it was part of the United States, when it was part of Mexico. So it was important for us to feature diverse voices with this program, and look into the historical relationship with Mexico.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I feel like it really it makes the album really unique and very pertinent. And so well, let's talk about specifically some of the music on the collection. There's a multi-movement piece that starts the album by violist and composer and Leilahua Lanzalotti. Who?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did you meet Anne? She has a couple records on New Focus, of course, and has just been a wonderful presence in the New York area for several years. And now I know she's moving back to Hawaii, where she grew up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's an amazing person. We actually first met at college. We both went to the Oberlin Conservatory, and then we ended up later being roommates at Lucerne Festival Academy.
Oh, cool.
So that was certainly a place, it's a new music festival. So we both had that interest, shared. And I knew that she had started work in composing. And so I really wanted to feature, again, some different voices, especially the voices of women. And it was great bringing the her indigenous background, and everything that she brought to this project with that. She's just such an amazing thinker and artist, beyond even just a musician or a composer. Like the thoughts and ideas that she has are really feels like on another level. So it was a really beautiful and special partnership to work with her, and we really enjoy the piece that she wrote.
Yeah, she's sort of, as you say, on top of all the other things she does, she has a great knack for curation, I think, and just sort of
Mm-hmm.
envisioning projects and making them happen, and it's really cool. And
Mhm.
this piece specifically is based on some texts from the Lakota Nation. Did I read? I feel like I read that.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's correct.
yeah,
Yeah, so Anne, I asked her, the two themes of the project were going to be place and identity, and how those two can be linked. And so she took that, very carefully and very thoughtfully, and she drew from a beautiful poem written by Layli Long Soldier, and who is a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation. She currently lives in Santa Fe, so another sort of Southwest connection here. And Anne's piece is called "The Space in Which to See." And what she had told me about it's sort of an exploration of her own indigenous identity, and the reaction response to this poem, and as she said, about the knowing from within.
great. So we're going to listen to a little bit of an excerpt from the first movement, right?
Yes.
Do you want to introduce that musically at all, or should we listen first and then talk about it a little bit after?
Um, yeah, well, it's always good to just listen and
Okay,
be
let's do that.
immersed in a
Let's do
sound.
that.
Yeah,
So this
perfect.
is the first track off the album, "The Space in Which to See," and the movement title is "This Is How You See the Space in Which to Place Me." Sorry, "This Is How You See Me, the Space in Which to Place Me." Beautiful. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what we just heard?
Yeah, definitely. So the the way this the piece is, again, it's inspired by a poem, and each poem, it's actually written in the shape of a square. So each movement, you kind of have to turn it around in a way to read it, and the spacing is significant. So in this one in particular, this movement, "This is how you see me, the space in which to place me," there's almost no space.
Hmm.
And I think there's the question of, is there space for me to be who I am in this world? And I think that Anne did a really beautiful job creating that feel with the music. Again, there's the contrast of such a dense texture, and so many thoughts and feelings and sounds happening, contrasted with that stark silence, and
Mhm.
sort of growing in intensity as it comes to an end. So even though we won't listen to the rest of the piece, it really follows a beautiful shape throughout, of kind of exploring these different concepts of place, belonging, and it has a beautiful ending.
Yeah, I love her sense for instrumental and ensemble color. She's
Mhm.
discovered some really beautiful sonorities within your guys' instrumentation. So
Mhm.
great. Well, let's move on to another track on the album that is definitely pretty contrasting. This is "Dream Machine" by Charles Daniels, also written for the group. Um,
Mhm.
Maybe give a little bit of a background on the impetus for this commission and this piece.
Sure. Yeah. So Charlie, he goes by Charlie. He was born and raised in Mexico City, and is another composer who I wanted to work with. He's written several pieces for wind quintet, so that's actually the way that I got to know his music originally. It's clear that he loves the sound of the horn. So
Yeah.
of course that was always a excitement, draw for me. Although my goal, I'm sort of the, artistic lead for the group, but my intention is that it's not, you know, uh, even though my voice of my instrument's different from the strings, but that it really is a chamber music and that we're trying to
Sure.
build
Yeah.
the repertoire. So, this was fun because he used a larger instrumentation. We sort of have a flexible instrumentation in the group to just accommodate, the different ideas and desires of composers. So he
Mhm.
went for a larger instrumentation. He definitely has an interest in and background in rock and metal. And so I feel like that is really present in his music. His music is always real crowd pleaser with audiences. There are driving rhythms and just an energy kind of combined with, beautiful melodic moments.
Yeah.
So so we were really excited to work with him to create something for this ensemble.
Great. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I didn't really mention it. It was an oversight, but obviously, throughout the album, your horn playing is wonderful, and it brings such a great color to. I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't think we have another album in the New Focus catalog that features horn on this level. So it's really great to hear composers integrating this instrument that's so key to the orchestral repertoire into contemporary chamber music, and to do all these different things with it. It's cool. It's very very exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it is a unique ensemble in a way. I mean, it certainly there's not a large repertoire for this group, but there are some really key famous pieces, of course, for horn and string chamber music, and
Sure.
kind of that combined with my interest in contemporary music. It's just a really fun group to work with. The
Yeah.
sound, I love the sound of strings. Again,
Right.
my most of my career has been spent in the orchestra, and it's just such a beautiful sonority to be a part of. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. Great. Well, so let's listen to a little snippet from Dream Machine by Charlie Daniels. Great. So we were going to reference one other track on the recording, Alejandro Vera's, let me try not to get this wrong, Omoteot. I
Yeah,
probably got sort of
great.
close in the ballpark, but it refers to an Aztec god of creation, right? The sort of overlord Aztec god. And as we have been talking about, Alejandro Vera went to try to uh, conjure up sort of pre-Hispanic rhythms and instrumental associations through the way he wrote the piece. You want to talk a bit more about it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so Alejandro he's done like pretty much everybody on this album has, we chose everybody really thoughtfully, and his background is with doing some film music and crossover, and that was another thing with Charlie's music, and everyone. It's a cool thing being a performer. We're just so it's just so amazing to get to hear and experience all these perspectives that different composers bring to us, and we just are the channel that brings it to life. So for him, again, that idea of kind of blending across boundaries is exciting. And this particular piece, he's trying to kind of conjure some concepts of pre-Hispanic rhythms, but also in a very modern setting. So a lot of modern and ancient sounds, and I think it really plays very nicely with Anne's piece that we listened to earlier. Again, bringing in indigenous backgrounds and that aesthetic. So this particular excerpt that we're going to listen to, I feel like it's almost sort of a soundscape. The piece, it's about a 10-minute piece, and it really unfolds. So you'll have to come back and listen to the full piece, since a snippet can't really do it justice. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
it does feel like a creation, sort of, blowing out of, there's even, blowing wind through the horn, and these very, pitchless sounds, on the strings kind of evolving and
Mm.
growing and, organically, and then the rhythms kind of coming in, building to intensity. So what the part we're going to be listening to again is still sort of part of that beautiful and magical opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're pointing to something that is really effective about the piece. He's using a very contemporary sonic language to evoke
Mhm.
sort of an ancient time, but it's also an
Mhm.
ancient time that is part of a musical tradition that well, actually, we don't really know all that much about the musical tradition, I
Mhm.
suppose.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and it's not specifically by being pre-Hispanic, it's also sort of before the influence of European music came over
Mhm.
and sort of shaped the Americas. So
Mhm.
he's able to sort of fill in this blank space, which is really cool, and
Mhm.
create this very exotic feeling and very evocative. So I enjoy listening to this piece.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Totally
so let's.
agree. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think the concept, I'm not a historian, but I know there's some speculation. But I love the idea of, we're essentially any composer is dreaming to create new sounds. And so this is a great way of doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, very true. Okay, so let's take a listen to Omateat by Alejandro Vera. Great. So before we wrap up, I thought it might be sort of interesting to just ask you about your experiences over the last 4 years since you guys formed the ensemble in bringing music and concerts to different kinds of audiences in the Tucson area or around Arizona. And I know that's a big part of what you guys are interested in doing is bridging different communities and possibly different musical expectations or concert experience expectations. And how has that been there? I've certainly traveled to the Southwest plenty of times, but I don't feel like I've ever been immersed enough to sort of understand what the musical scene is like down there. And so that's, to me, that's a very interesting sort of point of discussion that I'm curious to pick your brain about.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, I feel like I'm still learning about it myself. I feel like I've lived here for 15 years, but there's a big divide between kind of the the pop music, the garage band, the indie musicians in Tucson, and the classical musicians. And we don't get to have a lot of overlap. And frankly, we don't get to go and hear them perform very often. So summer is pretty much one of the best times because we're not doing much activity with the symphony. So I can finally get out and hear local groups. And we do have a pretty thriving local community of indie bands and
Yeah,
performers.
sure.
So it's a neat environment. We're a very quirky place, smaller city, and yeah, I mean we're still building our following, but I think the way that we did this and the way we're going to keep going forward is just working with a lot of partners. So especially when it's getting in the realm of music that doesn't belong to my culture or my background. So that is something we wanted to do, again, by bridging, but not trying to be something we're not. So again, like I said before, we're a classical music ensemble. There's a really rich and varied history to the music of this region and to the music of Mexico. And so we worked with a lot of collaborative partners to create some programs. So we have received some really positive community feedback, which is really meaningful. And in fact, we've sort of gaining partners by people coming to our programs. So we had a really special program based on the Day of the Dead with one of our collaborative partners, Dr. Luis Coronado Gell. And so he's a Mexican historian. So he created lecture content, and he's very similar to us in that, really liking to get out of the classroom and give interactive lecture experiences in small and different venues. So we work together both with him and our guitarist, who's kind of come along board with the group as well, Dr. Jose Luis Puerta, to create some arrangements of some really well-known Mexican tunes. So I think that's where we're going to be going forward, with our next projects, is just continue with this eclectic mix. Again, people are looking for just a fun and different experiences here. So I think trying to create a balance with the programming is important to us. So we're trying to highlight these really beautiful new works, but also sharing and tapping into the history of many parts of the Tucson community.
Yeah. Well, and we should mention, if it's not clear to anybody watching this chat, that there are 3 really great arrangements at the end of this album of yours of some of this Mexican traditional material. But actually, even to say it's Mexican traditional material probably would be to misrepresent the differences between the 3 pieces, because they all come from sort of different strains of Mexican musical tradition, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of one of the pieces by Juventino Rosas, Across the Waves, very famous waltz,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's perfect for this album because again, it's that question of place and identity, and it's a piece that a lot of people it's so European in its
Yeah.
approach, but it was written by a Mexican
Right.
composer, and
Right.
it's just interesting. All these things get jumbled up, and I think the point of this album is to show the different, the depth of
Yeah.
every human's experience, and
Sure.
so another piece that we didn't talk about too much, but a really special one for me on this album is by Vivian Fine, and this is actually the first studio recording of that piece, Songs and Arias, and it's another one that I think kind of plays on this idea of classical music identity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just fun. It's playful. It's got comedy in it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we try to do with the group, is not take ourselves too seriously.
Right.
But yeah, it's been beautiful to see people responding to us here and really enjoying and appreciating the concerts we've performed here.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think especially, I mean, you guys have this very sort of concrete identity as being based in Tucson, based near the border, and you're commissioning these new pieces that are responding to that, and then to give it some context with these new arrangements for your ensemble of material that might sort of just be in the musical water of the area, and the
Mm-hmm.
musical water that everybody's drinking in a way. I think
Yeah.
is great. So
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed that element a lot. So we also want, I mean, you mentioned both Dr. Jose Luis Puerta and Dr. Luis Coronado Gell, sorry.
Gallant.
Um, and also, we should mention the wonderful visual art, quote unquote, behind me was made by Jessica Gonzalez, whose work is
Yeah.
throughout the design, and Wiley Ross engineered the album, and Robert Jaime designed it. So a lot of really great collaborators, almost all of whom are local to the Borderlands region, right?
Yeah, totally. And yeah, oh, my dog is here because we're on we're on Zoom. Hey,
We're on
hey.
Zoom, yeah,
Um, so just to say a minute more about Jessica,
yeah.
she has just really taken off with her work in town. She's a muralist primarily, and I just feel so honored and lucky that she joined us for this project because her murals are everywhere. She's done so many pieces in the last couple of years.
I'm moving over so people can see the whole.
Yeah, and so we actually created four pieces, four new paintings, and they were meant to be presented in person. Each one was responding to one of the new compositions. Again, like we really try to do some interactive and multimedia elements to our performances. So we had to sort of adapt that with the pandemic. We were not able to do a live performance yet, really, of most of the music on this album. But we did recently do a live stream event that involved the paintings, and we've created some other video content sort of featuring that artwork. So trying to give people again, other ways to connect with it. And it's been cool to hear like Jessica's approach was so awesome. She listened to all of the music many times, and she didn't want to read any program notes first. She really wanted to get her own impression. And I just love that idea of, two people might listen to something and they might take some similarities away or some really different elements. And it's not, as a performer, not for me to decide what people are going to hear and what they're going to connect with. So I just love bringing in that different perspective. So
Yeah.
it's been cool, and I hope people enjoy that artwork as
Oh,
it's placed in the album.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
all the different elements that came together to make this project really made it very rich, I think. So it's
yeah.
great.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks so much.
Yeah.
This was really fun and great to hear a bit more about the background. So everybody, please check out the album, and it'll be available all the places you would expect to be able to pay or not pay for music these days. It's coming out on August 6th. It's Borderlands Ensemble, The Space in Which to See. And thanks again, Johanna, for joining us. Okay.
My
Take
pleasure.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.